interface for your roadmap for this course, that is research for strategic development. Lastly, we
Mm.
did the complete LO1 with the respective task 1, 2. Now we will be moving towards LO2, and today we will be doing LO2 heading according to the indicative content and AC 2.0. Because now from onwards, LO2, we are going to solely focus on the topic of the research. If you remember, I chose the CSR, corporate social responsibility. So I managed to do the 2.1 accordingly. Only LO2 is according to the indicative content, which is actually the whole interface for the assessment criteria. Like you will see in the slides too that LO2, the first heading, is completely according to this indicative content. That is research methodology, methods. We will discuss survey questionnaires, size and sufficiency. Everything is going to be there, but in obviously summarized form. But I will try my best to make it more clear to you. Okay?
Okay, sure.
Able to use different research methodologies to gather sufficient and valid data. Now, once you are done with the topic, you have selected the title for your research, then you have done the abstract, objectives, aims, hypothesis. Then we have to work on the literature review, which is actually a methodology as well. Both go side by side. So we're going to discuss that and how we actually do the research for research methodologies. We are going to actually work on that. What are those points which are included in it? To effectively gather sufficient and valid data, you must understand and apply different research methodologies. These methodologies are essential to ensure that the information collected is accurate, reliable, and useful for the research objectives. Like when people do the research, the one which are in the bachelor's, or people are doing research in the home, just for the sake of a degree or a certification, they do the secondary researches. They actually improve to little bit more contribution into already existing work. There are also research which are the primary, which are absolutely new. Like when the pandemic came beforehand, we did had plague in the last century too, but it was not the COVID. It was not the coronavirus. So many people
Mm.
used to started writing papers about vaccinations. There were two kinds of reviews as well that you should get the vaccine shots. Few people say that you should not go for it. It is just another technique to get into the virus. So this is how when the new topic comes in the industry, you do the research on that, and that's a raw research. But now we are focusing on the secondary research only, the one which is already present in the form of past papers in the internet, YouTube, different AGMs, and so on. Okay. The first part is research methods. Research methods refer to the techniques used to collect the data. That is, all those steps which are required in collection of the data, they are known as methods for research. These can be qualitative or quantitative. That is one which is only referring to the quality, and the next one is referring to the quantity in numerical form. And the choice of method depends on the nature of the research question. We also discussed in LO1 the research questions too. The first thing
Yes.
is First method basically is surveys. Surveys are structured questionnaires that can be administered manually on the paper or electronically via emails or online forms. Nowadays, people only work on literally online surveys. Strength, that is the advantage for it. Cost effective, can reach a large audience, standardized responses, and is suitable for the quantitative data. When you're dealing with a large number of detail, then you can always go for the survey. Now you would see these are only one or two words strengths, that is advantages. When you are going to do it, you have to explain that. Weaknesses. Responses may be superficial, low response rates, and limited depth of the insight because we cannot rely on the mood of the person or the responsive or respondent that how they are actually filling up with the forms. Application. Surveys are ideal for gathering numerical data such as consumer satisfaction, employee engagement, and market trends. Now, there are certain, if I talk about specifically satisfaction of the consumer, there's a score called CSR score in which we see whether the person, an individual, he's happy with the experience of the product, of food, or anything. Like
Hmm.
even when we dine in the restaurants, what they do, they always give you a piece of paper, a card actually, and they say that please fill it. That's a review in a form of survey. Then questionnaires. Questionnaires are sets of predefined questions that a respondents answer in the writing or electronically. Like surveys, they can be quantitative or qualitative. Surveys were only dealing with the quantity, whereas the questionnaires, they are dealing with the both aspects. Can reach a large group quickly, enables comparisons, easy to analyze. Like I make a questionnaire, I do that on the Google Sheets, and I can send it everybody on the Google Meets, the one which are added in my ID. However,
Hmm.
responses can lack detail, may be subject to bias depending on how questions are phrased. Now, sometimes the questions are quite simple, but the thinking of the human can be different as well. Maybe they're not happy with the questions or they're not able to present it. Application. Useful in assessing the opinions, preferences, and attitudes, often used for the employee feedback or consumer satisfaction. We go ahead for these when these two kinds of problems arises, or we need something from them, that is the consumers. Then the third method is interviews. Interviews can be structured, semi-structured, unstructured. They allow for the in-depth exploration of the topics. Like you can take the interview randomly, like in the class when we talk with the new students. Few teachers they always prepare in interview slides too to know the strengths and weaknesses. Your I used to literally scared when I was in A levels that whenever my teacher used to come, the new teacher, they used to ask me
Hmm.
what are your strengths and weaknesses, and at that time I used to literally spend 30 minutes to know what are my strengths and weaknesses because these were things which were never taught to us or we were not experienced to it. But now, when gradually we entered into the university, spent 6 years, we were able to prep the literally every field. However, time consuming requires skilled interviewers. Qualitative data is harder to analyze. Like when you even apply for the American visas or the Canadian visas, you go to the embassies for the interviews for the
Hmm.
Form D16. What happened is there, you are asked with the plenty of questions. So the person who is sitting there, he is quite professional and he knows how to tackle you up. Because sometimes what happens is people they're going on the tourist visa and they do the work there. They can convert their visas to application. Particularly useful for when the detailed subjective information is needed, such as understanding employee morale or consumer experience. If you want to know that what is going on in the industry, in your own organization too, in the department XYZ, you can ask different people, you can have an interview panel and can see that what's actually the main problem. Method number four, observations. In this method, researchers observe participants in real life situations, recording behaviors, actions, or events. Like many researchers, literally, what they used to do, they used to split the people into two groups, group A and B, and then you used to apply their research methodologies, their researches, their work on them, and then they used to see that which group performed well and which lagged in the performance. Strength captures real-world behavior, minimizes response biasness, provides context to the quantitative data. Whereas can be time-consuming and costly, observer bias is possible. That is, again, every human has his own eye, his own thinking, his own mind and heart, and the opinions too. So even if you are observing, you are doing an observation, result might change. Application
Hmm.
ideal for the studies in social behavior, workplace interactions. Like these observations are done mostly in the sociology subject, psychologies, and like these, and geology too. Or understanding the consumer behaviors in the retail setting, that is in the market industry too. Fifth method, case studies. Case studies involve detailed investigations of a single instance or group, such as a company or an individual or process. When you actually write a whole case study, um, what actually we're doing in it, first we always go for the abstract that what the case study is going to be about, and then we start with introduction and a detailed, literally, aspect of our research which we have done for the particular topic in a title, and in the end we always go for the recommendations. Provides in-depth knowledge, rich qualitative data, and insights into the real-world applications because we always backed our work of the case study with the real-world scenarios. However, not generalizable to the larger population, resource intensive, because you do not have a large amount of research money with you. You have a very small bulk and you need to produce it by your own self. Application Case studies are common in the business research, particularly to analyze organizational practices or decision-making processes, because you are able to quantify the questions as well, and you are able to read the questions too and give the answers from the case studies as well, even in the business sectors too. Now we're done with the methods. Under the same heading, the second point is testing sufficiency, reliability, and validity of what? Of research. Because we're doing research methodology, this is the second heading. To ensure that your data is adequate for the research purposes, you must assess its sufficiency, reliability, and validity. Maybe you're doing the work on outdated topic. You need to do the thorough research, whether you're having enough past papers, base papers, and articles to actually source your work. The first point for the testing sufficiency, reliability, and data validity is sufficiency of data. This refers to the extent to which the data collected is enough to meet the research objectives, the questions which we made in the LO1. Testing sufficiency. Ensure that the sample size is larger enough to represent the target population. Like when you have to apply actually theory on some people, on a group of people, you actually decide notion of the number two, that you're going to do that on 50 people, 100 people, or 20 people. Use diverse data sources to cover all aspects of the topic. You're not going to depend your research on one aspect or on one link or one paper. You have to dignify it into different sectors. Consider redundancy, that is when additional data adds little to understanding, which indicates that the data is sufficient. When the data which you have already researched for the topic you have decided for the research proposal or a thesis, you know that it's enough, it's going to be enough, and it is able to answer every query. Then we have reliability. Reliability refers to the consistency of the results produced by the data. Now we have performed different researches, different methods, different techniques. Then we actually see whether it was reliable enough or not. For that, what we do? We do the testation. First test, retest reliability. The consistency of the results when the same test is administered multiple times into the same participants. Like you decided we're going to do the work on 50 people, you have selected them, and now you're going to do the research on them on the seasonal basis, depending on monthly basis, or whatsoever or kind of research you're conducting. Internal consistency. Assess how well the items in the questionnaires or the survey measure the same construct. That is, whatever you have made in the questionnaire, whether you are being reliable with the data too. Inter-rater reliability. The degree of agreement among multiple observers or raters. Most of the time, you are not only the one who is conducting the research or writing the thesis. There is a group of a two, of four, of six, sometimes even numbers, sometimes odd numbers. So you need to see their work as well, their opinions as well. That is why there is a critique in the opinions. Then we have validity. Validity is the extent to which the data accurately measures what it is intended to measure. That is the validation. Whatever the topic is, your work, your homework, your research should be accordingly to it. Testing and validity. First, content validity. Ensure that the questions or the measurements cover all the aspects of the research topic. You should be very careful while selecting the topic and afterwards the questions, because it is depending on the complete research. Construct validity. The degree to which a test measures the theoretical construct it is supported to measure. That is all the instinct you have taken from the different past papers. External validity. How will the findings can be generalized to the wider population? When you're done with the work, how you're going to show it to the people? Sometimes your supervisors, they are quite intelligent and they're quite superanded. What they do is, if your work is quite commendable, then they always try best to publish that first in the university and then in the different portals. Like in Pakistan, we have SCP HEC, where we actually go submit our work if it is unique only then, and then they actually give a thorough testation on it, and then they publish it. You have a name in the whole research methodologies. Face validity. Whether the data collection methods appear to measure what they claim to. Whatever the methods you have suggested in the research, you need to be very sure that actually they are abiding by it as well. Then we have data sources. the third point in this methodology. The first one, primary versus secondary. Data can be classified into two categories. Primary data is collected directly from the original sources through methods such as surveys, interviews, and observations. So we did discuss the methods of research in which we talked about surveys, interviews, and observations. When we are conducting these three things, this meant that we're doing the primary data. That is, we're doing everything raw, a new thing. However, secondary, okay, we have to do strengths and weaknesses too. Strengths, first-hand information specific to the research questions and up to date. Everything is latest. However, time-consuming, costly, requires significant evident data collection processing. Like in Pakistan, many universities do not give funding to the people who are performing research, primary research. They are doing everything on their own. But at the time of credit, when we are noting our teachers with the different designations and names, they always come first. That's raw to raw. For example, interviews with the employees, service of the consumers, direct observations. If you work in a corporate sector and you're conducting the research, then you can always go ahead as the person who's filling the questionnaires and surveys. They could be your peer groups, peer colleagues too. Then secondary data. It comes from already published sources like academic journals, company reports, and government publications. Okay? Government publications are actually the research papers. As I told you, when we're doing the work, you go to the certain bodies, framework like HSC in Pakistan, and then they publish their work, but under their name. Strength, less time consuming, readily available, often extensive because it's quite easily accessible from the internet. But sometimes you need to buy a few papers on the internet too, like from the ResearchGate, not every, it's a website for the past papers. You cannot download every past paper. Weaknesses may not be specific to the research needs. Data may be outdated or irrelevant because sometimes what happens is your topic is quite problematic. For example, I conducted in 2018 a case study named Water Scarcity. Uh, I used to find the paper of 90s. There was no paper of 20s. From 2000 while till 2016, I literally had no paper for it. So it was so tough for me to do the research, to write the case study only, that it took me almost 7 months to only write a case study. And maximum time to write a thesis is only 6 months. So you can compare that how difficult it was.
Hmm.
For example, literature reviews, financial reports, existing consumer feedback. Then we have qualitative versus quantitative data. Data can be also be categorized based on its form, that's qualitative or quantitative. Qualitative. Qualitative data refers to the non-numerical information that provides detailed descriptions or insights. That is all written, all paraphrased, all detailed depth. Strength, rich, detailed, provides context and understanding. It's the topic of the title you have chosen already. However, hard to quantify. When you actually try to sum up, it gets way too difficult because you're not dealing with the numbers. You need to literally summarize the whole thesis of so many words, of so many pages, sometimes 80 pages, sometimes maximum, how many pages? 1500 pages too. You need to scrutinize that in one page, the summary form. So it gets way too difficult. For example, employee feedback from the interviews, open-ended responses, case study narratives. Okay, we were quantitative data. It refers to the numerical information that can be measured and statistically analyzed. That is, you perform different techniques and tools, softwares in your research, like SPSS, Excel, different calculations, Lanajar, so on. Strength, easy to analyze, objective, generalizable, because they are usually numbers. So it gets way too easy to apprehend the data. However, may oversimplify complex issues, lack depth, because you're only giving the numbers. But what actually it is depicting, sometimes it lacks. That is why we're always focused on the trends, trend analysis, and formulation. For example, consumer satisfaction ratings, out of 10, you give 8, out of 10, you give 5, like that. Sales data, productivity metrics like KPIs. Then we have literature research, search and review. Conducting a literature review involves analyzing existing research to understand the current knowledge on a topic. It also helps identify gaps in the research. If you remember, I talked about the gap in the research in
Mm-hmm.
LO1. Always write research gap, that on what purpose or on what topic or on what lines you thought that this is the time you have to do the research. That is what the research gap is. You have already decided a research paper for your, that is the base paper for your research. But maybe there is something unique that you think that you need to do more research on it. First, the credibility of sources. When reviewing the literature, it assesses the credibility of the sources. That is from where you are actually taking the data. Peer-reviewed articles. They are more credible because they have undergone rigorous scrutiny, because they have been accepted by, passed by many researchers already. Books written by experts in the field, especially those published by academic presses, are typically reliable. They are. Industry reports. Uh, Even sometimes what in my case study and research helped me, I used to go to the Google, write the topic, and go into the video section. There I used to find very neat latest things. Then industry reports provide practical insights but may have biases if sponsored by the companies. And that's true as well, because it's very easy nowadays to be sponsored in every social media way too quickly. Then we have use and acceptance. This is the part B for it. First was credibility of sources for the literature review sources, and then use and acceptance. Research that is widely cited or referenced by other scholars is often deemed credible and useful. The methodology, sample size, and transparency of data collection process should also be evaluated. Now, the methodology, sample size, transparency of the data collection, that is data collection itself. These are actually discussed in the whole thesis paper. We talked about that what is the sample size? It's a youth, it is elderly people, or they are the older one, and how many number. We discussed everything in it. Referencing sources. For you, it is only Harvard referencing style. So whenever you are going to do the referencing, you have to do that in the Harvard style. Both in text and bibliography. That is, in the literature review, when you're going to take the lines from the certain past papers, you are going to cite that source in Harvard style. And when we're done with the research, you have to give a last page as a reference, and all that is going to be in the Harvard notion. Then size, sufficiency, reliability, and validity of the information gathered. This was actually the last point from the indicative content. Okay. To ensure the quality of the research, consider size and sufficiency. That is, gather enough data collection and analysis methods. That is, you should have a bulk amount of papers. That is, I would recommend to prepare a separate file in your laptop, in your MacBook, whatever you have. And when you're going to review, start doing that easily. Don't do that first you're doing the first one paper and you write sources from it. First, gather all the valid papers, then go ahead. It will definitely reduce the deduction of your time, and it won't be time consuming too. Reliability
Mm-hmm.
ensures the consistency of the data collection and analysis methods. That is, it should be reliable. And the validity aspect, it confirms that the methods used measures what they are supposed to measure, and that findings can be generalized if applicable. It depends on the type of honesty. Conclusion. In summary, to gather sufficient and valid data, should carefully select appropriate research methods. So for the validity part and the sufficiency part, you have to first focus on the methods. Assess the reliability and validity of the data collected and ensure that the data is both qualitative and quantitative where necessary. Additionally, you should conduct a thorough literature review using credible sources and reference those sources accurately to support your research. This is what is a recommendation to you. We are done with complete LOT according to the indicative content. Was it clear to you?
Yes.
Okay. Now this is review different literature sources. That is, these are literally copy paste, but you are not gonna exactly copy paste. You are going to
Mm-hmm.
change a little bit of word. Otherwise, it will count with the plagiarism in the end. To find those most appropriate for the chosen area of research. That is the title. So these review means again revisit and analyze the detail of the positive and negative aspects. That is, you're going to talk about in both aspects, negative and positive. Okay. Uh, this is the topic. This was my topic. CSR and its role in business development. How it started? CSR has evolved as a critical factor in shaping the strategies and operations of the modern business. Companies increasingly recognize that CSR contributes not only to the ethical business practices but also to the long-term business success. Like your was, I think, 3,000 to 3,300 words, if I'm not wrong. Like, this was the limit. So you need to figure out everything accordingly. Now, these are exactly the papers. Like the first paper is Carroll's Pyramid of CSR. I chose this for 1991. I did find 2000s, but the latest ones were not there. This is the source. That's from where I took the paper. It is from Carroll B. 1991, The Pyramid of the Corporate Social Responsibility Toward the Moral Management of the Organizational Stakeholders' Business Horizons. This is the positive summary and the positive aspect that what actually I'm going to write in it. For example, I'm going to read only one paper, and then I added five. It all depends on you, but I would suggest five is more than enough because we have to be in the time limit, word limit, sorry. Carroll's pyramid remains one of the most fundamental and widely cited frameworks in the CSR literature. Now, once I read the paper, his literature review, this was the outcome. It breaks CSR into four essential responsibilities. This was his view: economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic. According to Carroll, business must first meet the economic responsibilities, that is, be profitable, have enough money, followed by the legal responsibilities, obey by the law and regulations framework, ethical responsibilities to what is right, that is, to be perfectly fine with every rules and regulations and being ethical too, and lastly, philanthropic, that is, contributing to the community. Whatever your work is for the CSR, it should be viable for the people, for the general public. This is the outcome. That is what I read from it. Then, according to the command verb, first, relevance to the business development, because my topic, if you see, was not only CSR, it was into the business development. So I have to relate the outcome from it too. Like what it was. Carroll's work underscores that CSR begins with financial viability, thus drawing CSR directly to the business development. The pyramid suggests that companies focusing on the CSR will enhance their operation, build trust with the stakeholders, and ultimately drive business growth. The economic foundation of the pyramid emphasizes that CSR is not just about ethical behavior, but also about improving the long-term business sustainability. So this was what? This was making my topic relevant to the subtopic which I chose. Positive critique. This source is valuable because it provides a holistic view of the CSR, linking it clearly to the overall strategic growth of the business. Carroll's work is widely regarded, making it authoritative source for the understanding how CSR practices can enhance the business development. It also illustrates how meeting stakeholder expectations through CSR fosters a positive image that can lead to competitive advantage and profitability. So these were the critiques that can say a kind of research gap on which you can work further. So are you clear now that how you're going to carry the 2.1?
Yes.
Okay, same. This is paper by Porter and Kramer, Shared Value Concept. Same thing, summary and positive aspect. Should I read it?
No need.
Okay. These are not copy paste. First of all, this is actually a summary. As in, you need to extract things from out of it because again, you will be backed up by the plagiarism, and I don't want that it comes because it gets way too difficult to eliminate plagiarism.
Mm.
Okay. Then relevance to business development and positive critique. Then I chose from Freeman's answer. Now, lastly, how I concluded it. After reviewing these key sources, it is evident that CSR plays a crucial role in the business development, affecting profitability, reputation, stakeholder relationships, and long-term sustainability. Now, the whole topic was only about the CSR and business development relation. Now, how I split it into my whole LO1. First, I talked about profit, then the goodwill, then what actually the stakeholders' relationship are, the one which own the whole organization, and whether it is backed by the long-term sustainability or not. Each literature source provides a unique perspective on how the businesses can integrate CSR into their strategy to drive growth and development. Carroll's pyramid, Porter and Kramer's shared value concept. This is what they actually both work on. They work on the concept of value more. And Freeman's stakeholder theory offered foundational frameworks for understanding CSR strategic goals. This was by the Freeman. He worked on the stakeholder aspect in the formulation of CSR topic. Then, while Forbum reputation model and Bansal and Roth's ecological responsiveness focus on the practical outcomes of CSR initiatives, that is, how actually it can come into the real world and show us the results. So every author, you see, they have done the work on one topic, but their view was different. Their research gap is different. They chose one thing and started working on it. By combining insights from these sources, businesses can develop robust CSR strategies that not only meet the ethical responsibilities but also contribute to the sustained business success. Now, all the data collection, your research methodology, specifically in today's class, the literature review, it all depends on the topic you select. So you
Mm.
need to be vigilant with that, that what topic you are sourcing. And once you are done with the selection of the topic, you need to gather at least 8 to 10 papers so that you can formulate a document of 3,000 to 3,300 words. That's it. These are the references. Was it clear?
Yes.
Any question, any conclusion you want to ask regarding any of the course or this lecture, you may ask me.
No, actually, I want to ask I have to complete this all within 2 weeks. You said, right, in the previous class?
Yeah, task one in 2 weeks.
Okay. Like if the time exceed, then there will be any deduction or something like that?
No, no, no. There won't be deduction at all. I would suggest that start working on task one because definitely you will be facing problem. You're not only having
Mm.
one course right now.